Hello everybody, I'm Alexey Krabrov, the organizer and founder of SF Scala, and here we are at Clara. This is our first time, it's our last meetup of the year, and we kind of start with the new company. We're very excited, and here we have Vlad Giverts with us, who is the head of engineering at Clara, and he's a long-term friend and partner of SF Scala. He hosted us before. Thank you, Vlad, and we're very happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you guys here.
Thanks
It's always fun.
Thanks for inviting us. So we met, I think, at least at two different previous companies.
Yeah.
Right? We met first at Identified. You invited us, and we shared the common love for IntelliJ idea, which was the idea of choice for Scala, and still remains the case, right? And then you were at Workday, right, doing machine learning and building the group there, and so then. You are kind of inviting us to this new place. So tell us a little bit, what is the trajectory, what is the Scala connection, what is Clara, and what's new?
Yeah. So, I mean, what is Clara is probably a bigger question, so I'll go into that probably a little separately.
Okay.
But just in a nutshell, why does Clara exist? And that is, the vast majority of people in this country do not fully understand how our financial system works.
Yes.
And they are not empowered to own their financial lives and make the right kind of financial decisions for their own benefit. So what we're trying to do is to empower them with kind of both education, information, kind of transparency on our part to take control of their financial lives. And we're starting with mortgages. Scala connection's interesting. It's actually some of the early employees, one of the first engineers at Clara. It was an ex-Twitter.
Okay.
So kind of had that Scala lineage. He brought it here. We run on the Twitter stack, Finagle, all of that.
All right.
It's serving us really well.
All right.
For a financial company in particular, having very, very strong types, making sure that we're not making subtle errors that can result in tremendous cost to us or our customers. And Scala is very helpful with that.
Cool. So I didn't know about the Finagle Foundation because we just ran Scala by the bay at Twitter, right, where Finagle was in the air, right, and it was the second time we actually did Finagle at Scala by the bay, right. Last year we did FinagleCon, and then we kind of did the whole thing together. And so one of the reasons we want to bring Finagle out of Twitter more, right, and we want to help them basically to kind of bring the goodness of it to the world.
And we're getting a lot of value out of it. We have a microservice architecture, and basically Finagle is kind of infrastructure and the glue for all of that.
All right. No, this is really cool. So it immediately gives me a lot of ideas, right? How to kind of connect more people to this. But tell me a little bit about kind of your trajectory in engineering, right? So I mean, you've been at Identified. I know Identified since they were on Ruby before they switched to Scala, right? So I kind of follow them, and obviously Workday is one of the biggest users of Scala. They send a lot of people to Scala by the Bay, right? So, and you did the hardest part. So can you tell me a little bit, how kind of your career kind of aligned with Scala, what you found useful, what you found hard, what do you want to not repeat at Clara, what do you want to do better at Clara?
Sure. So my first experience with Scala was probably in 2009 when I was at a company called Tagged. Tagged at the time was the third largest social network in the US. First was MySpace, then Facebook, then Tagged. And one of the other engineers was into functional programming. He was trying out Scala. He rewrote one of our services in Scala.
It was not Johan.
It was not Johan.
Yes.
He was the CTO.
That's right.
But this was one of our engineers, Itai. And Johan, the CTO, looked at the service, said, hey, this is very elegant. What was several hundred lines of code, he rewrote in 30 or 40. It seemed to perform equally well. It was much easier to understand. And he said, no, we can't ship this. Nobody here knows Scala. There's no good tooling support for Scala. There's no IDE support. It's I'm sorry, this isn't going to work out. Itai was disappointed. I was slightly terrified of Scala, kind of for the similar reasons, mostly because it seemed inaccessible to me. So we didn't do anything with it then. Fast forward a couple of years, I'm at a startup called Lionside. We're a Facebook social gaming. And I had joined as a very senior engineer, head of engineering, VP of engineering didn't work out. I somehow became the de facto person running engineering over there.
Okay.
And I was an IntelliJ user, and the IntelliJ Scala plugin came out.
Yes.
So I said, all right, let me try this out. And this hadn't just come out. I had been kind of playing with it a little bit, and some new iteration of it came out. And we tried it, and like, hey, we finally have some like decent syntax highlighting and a little bit of auto completion, actually showing you this red squigglies on where you make the errors.
Yes. All red on the right.
And I was like, hey, like this is actually viable. Like I think it gave people, it felt that it was enough of a guardrail for someone who's coding in Java to try Scala out, and even if they don't know the syntax, the IDE would kind of guide you.
Yes.
So we tried it out. And we started migrating some of our Java code into Scala. And it was nice.
Okay.
And it worked.
Okay.
And it was slow and it was kind of cumbersome, but like it did the job and we were happy with it. Fast forward another year and a half, I'm now CTO at a startup called Identified.
Yes.
We're hitting all kinds of scalability challenges, and there's got to be something to make it run. And we were using a bunch of Ruby on Rails, which is great. But like you can't write like persistent services that are running and processing things in memory. Like no, you kind of like you run. Essentially, it's almost like the PHP model. You start a process, you do stuff, and you're done.
Yes.
So we tried Scala for that. I knew Scala. Nobody else in the company actually did, but I kind of encouraged some of the engineers to pick it up. They ran with it, and we were really successful. Nice.
And they did a lot of graph processing, right? So this is kind of hard to do in Ruby, right? And Twitter switched away from Ruby for pretty same reasons.
Yeah. So then we started processing our big data in Scalding because we were on Hadoop.
Yes.
And Scalding was a really nice way of doing that. So
another Twitter open source software.
Yeah. So that was really helpful. Then we got acquired by Workday.
Yep.
And we kind of became the data products team at Workday. Big data, analytics, machine learning. And we went from like a half Ruby, half Scala shop at that point to 100% or like 90% Scala, where it was all big data all the time. All the services were writing in Scala. We'd moved up over to Spark, which is all Scala based.
Yep.
And kind of never looked back. And then incidentally, when I was looking for a transition, and I chose Clara as the next step for my career, they were already on Scala.
All right.
So I was like, all right.
All right.
Yeah.
No, this is great. So Simon still works for Workday.
Simon team, which was the former Identified team, still at Workday.
Yes.
They're very happy and growing.
Yeah, we've met a lot of folks. One of my good friends works there. So that's really good. So kind of you increase the amount of Scala in the startup world, and kind of the benefits are coming back. I want to kind of give you kind of an interesting data point, and I wonder what you think about it. So I found that in the last year, several fintech startups, which I kind of call loosely because fintech can be anything. So basically, which have something to do with finance. Start using Scala. So there are several companies which were using Bitcoin for whatever reason. Bitcoin blockchain actually has a lot of open source projects using Scala. So that actually is interesting. And then there is another company called Tally, and they recently joined us. They were founded by Shasta, which funds a lot of Scala companies, right, including TypeSafe, Lightband. And so they want to build a new bank. They basically want to effectively refund your credit cards, right? Take a better line of credit to repay credit cards and let you manage debt. And when I talked to them, what was the reasons they chose Scala? They mentioned several, and they mentioned correctness, right, because they're a financial institution, but they also mentioned that it makes it potentially easier to enable acquisition, because financial companies know Java. A lot of banks are using Java, right? So basically, they already are on JVM, and so the reasoning goes that Scala runs on JVM, and therefore it's easier to interop with larger companies. And so I wonder if, first of all, it's kind of a bit surprising to me, right? Because you would think finance is a very conservative industry, but here's actually an argument for legacy compatibility through JVM, right? And kind of a technology which would enable potential integrations with bigger companies. So I wonder if you guys thought about that, or if not, like what do you think about this line of reasoning?
Yeah, so in our case, we really, really do not want to be acquired. So it's basically transform consumer finance or go home. But the reasoning makes a lot of sense. So I know when Workday was looking to acquire Identified, they were on the JVM stack running mostly Java. We were running a lot of Scala.
Yes.
So for them, they said, oh, this naturally slots in. We know how to run Java. We've got a lot of JVM expertise. So if they needed to transfer people to our teams, that's something they could do. So it definitely played into their calculus for that acquisition. So it makes sense that other fintech companies, if acquisition is a potential outcome they're looking for, then that's something they should consider.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't mean that Tally wants to be acquired. That's the reason, right? Like, I mean, obviously everybody wants to be very big. And I think another question is, I'm just curious, kind of your business model, right? But like, in order to play here, you need a lot of capital.
Yes.
Right. So I think if you want to be a bank or if you kind of facilitate mortgages, can you tell me a little bit more? How would you add value to the horrible mortgage business? I bought a house last year, so like to me, buying a house is just an exercise in PDF, right? Basically, it's PDF and electronic signing and ridiculous credit approval through slow-moving banks, right? Which is so like it's broken on many levels. So I wonder, how do you want to improve it with all the technology?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Mortgage banking is really an information processing problem. Because what does it mean to get a mortgage? It's kind of like filing your taxes. That's kind of filling out the mortgage application.
Yep.
And then getting audited at the same time.
Correct.
So, and that's not very fun.
Yes.
What we're trying to do is streamline and automate as much of that as possible. So instead of you getting on the phone and dealing with your broker or loan manager or whoever they were, and constantly checking, so what's going on, what's happening, what do I need to do?
Right.
Maybe they're calling you and telling you what you need to do. Instead, imagine just an online experience where you go step by step. You collect whatever information you need, you put it all in there. Most everything is automatically verified via API integrations. And there's all kinds of complexity that today is done by, we've got processors and underwriters and compliance people and lock desk and capital markets and closers, funders. I mean, there's probably like 5 other functions I'm not mentioning, which is incredibly human labor intensive.
Yes.
All of that being streamlined, orchestrated by either workflow systems or whenever possible automated. And as the consumer, you can see what's happening step by step. So it's totally transparent to you. You know when your mortgage is going to get closed. You know what the bottlenecks are. And you always know what's on you. So at the end of the day, what was this horribly painful process where you have no idea what's going on, or even if you're going to get the mortgage, becomes like open and transparent.
Yes.
And so heavily automated that it probably takes a small fraction of the time.
Can you, do you plan to give hard guarantees what closing time window will take?
So eventually, yeah, we're not there yet.
Because I think that's very important, right? In Bay Area, right? Like they demand very short closing windows.
Yeah.
And then the banks could not deliver it. Right? So the traditional banks are very slow. So are you going to use traditional banks? I'm basically going to use underlying banks and for financing, or your own? So, sort of. We're not inventing a new model for mortgages. We're not creating new sources of capital. Some players in the space are. The way it works is we partner with warehouse banks. They're kind of like wholesalers for money. So when we close your loan, we have a credit line with them, and we'll literally just wire transfer the money from the warehouse bank to your escrow account. And boom, you have your loan, you have your home, and you can move on. We then sell the loan to seller aggregators. These are companies that purchase these securities, these loans from other mortgage banks, and then they bundle them into what this called which
mortgage.
Usually initiate the mortgages.
What's that?
So there are companies which initiate mortgages right now, and then they sell them quickly to the aggregators.
Exactly, and eventually we'll become the aggregator ourselves as we get big enough. So we will disintermediate them. We've already disintermediated brokers. We're doing that part, like talking to the customer directly ourselves, and then we'll eventually sell directly to the capital markets. whether that's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or other investors, but we're going to interface directly with them. So the goal is to create as short of a distance as possible between a home buyer, a consumer, and the sources of capital.
Nice. So, I personally found so the problems with banks, in my case, right, let's say an Experian has the wrong social security number for my wife. That completely stops Bank of America.
Yeah.
The best is I go back to Experian, fix it, right, and then proceed.
Yeah.
So, and somebody told me Bank of America will never close on time. And I said, no, they give me a very good rate. I'm, premium customer.
Yeah.
And they said, no, they won't do this, right? They almost cried. They asked me to consider the fact that they will not be able to do this. I have extremely short closing time. So I just, for fun, just to entertain and humor this person, I initiated the process with two. Because I felt bad about this, because one of them is not gonna get the deal, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna work for me, and I'm gonna say no. I'm going with the other one because maybe the rate is different. And Bank of America failed because Experian had a bureaucratic mistake that completely stops them in their tracks. They say go back to Experian. You cannot even call Experian.
Yeah.
Right. There's a whole bunch of people calling Experian saying my credit report is wrong. Give me credit. Right. My credit score is wrong because of some mistakes. Right. So basically. Fortunately, the second worker was able to do this, right? So I was very grateful to the person who advised me, right? So the traditional bank, apparently post-crisis, right? They're basically super conservative. So I wonder, right? But the infrastructure is here, right? There is TransUnion, there is Experian, right? Equifax, and so apparently for Bank of America, it's sacred. These regulations. Numbers have to match. 2 out of 2 match, third doesn't match, go fix it, right? They're basically, right? So are you able to fix this kind of errors, right? Which kind of throw a monkey wrench into the whole process. Are you able to deal with this? Because if you're relying on the bank itself, right, the bank will do the same thing even if you do it online. So are you able to apply the intelligence, right? Like any intelligent person looking at this probably will say this should not stop. Right, my application. So how are you going to deal with this kind of stuff which currently people perceive as kind of bureaucratic nonsense?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we're trying to do with our workflow systems and our automations is actually leverage people what people are best at, and that's applying judgment. So whether it's this case or some other non-happy path case that maybe the automated systems or the workflow systems can't handle, we will have an exception flow where computers handle the easy stuff, and if something's out of the ordinary, it goes to people whose job isn't to make a routine decision, but actually to exercise judgment, which in this case would be a perfect example of, okay, obviously this is okay, there's just 1 out of 3 is off, let's just ignore them and move on.
Yeah, and it's not the primary, right? So it's kind of, but that will be possible because you will have your own judgment about this warehouse bank credit. Yeah,
well, I think there are certain restrictions as to what Fannie and Freddie Mac are willing to deal with, but that's not one of them. So if it's purely an internal restriction, then we're actually setting people up to exercise judgment rather than setting people up to follow a strict process. So I think it's kind of just in terms of how we're organizing ourselves. That's going to be the big difference.
So it looks like you should be a mortgage AI company. It sounds like you have a lot of machine learning to do, right? Because some of these things are going to be scary.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for ML and machine learning and artificial intelligence? Can you become an AI company in mortgage space?
Interesting. So we are going to apply AI. It's going to be around a few different things. It's going to be around customer lifetime value, trying to understand what kinds of people should we put more emphasis on. It's going to be risk analytics, trying to gauge what is the credit risk that any given person poses. That's actually going to be very valuable to us. If we can demonstrate a superior risk model based on AI, we can actually market our mortgages to investors for a bigger premium. We can literally have higher revenues if we're really good at AI. So that's probably the most immediate application.
Interesting. And how far are you from this?
We're still a ways. We're probably going to start doing our first predictive analytics more on the user acquisition side, more marketing side of things, in maybe Q2, Q3 of next year.
Okay.
And
it's not too far away.
Not too far away. Lifetime in startup years.
Yes.
And then more on the risk modeling, probably late next year or early the following year.
Okay. And do you have any idea which software stacks are going to use for machine learning?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
All right, come to one of our meetups. We're gonna host one of them. We'll have Bay Area AI in addition to the SF Scala and SF Spark, right? And so I think MLlib and Spark ML, it's all kind of good options at this point.
Yeah.
Cool. So super exciting. Looking forward to your talk about Clara and our main meetup. And thank you very much for having us here.
All right. Thank you, Alexei.
It's fun.